All right, Warren, welcome to the Wealth Tech Podcast. I am happy to have you on the show. Today, we're going to talk about all things cybersecurity and how family offices can protect themselves and the families they serve. Recent Deloitte survey had noted that 57% of North American family offices experience a cyber attack. My guess is that that number is probably actually higher. That might be underreported, but only 33% had a dedicated cybersecurity budget. So still a long ways to go on this really important and evergreen topic. Before we get into it, would you mind giving a quick background of introduction of yourself and a background on Omega Systems?
Sure. Thanks, Mark. I am super excited to be part of your podcast. I am Warren Finkel, Managing Director of Omega Systems. I've been in the IT and cybersecurity space, consulting and solving problems for 25 years. Omega specializes in financial services with a focus on family offices. I can give you a little bit of background of what's happening in the cybersecurity business. We're thinking cybercrime is a business, and that business is booming. And if you think that is the end, AI is changing the game again with deepfakes, autonomous malware, and soon we are going to see quantum-powered attacks that will crack today's data security in seconds. 70% of single-family offices view cybersecurity as their top risk and biggest operational risk. I think the top three reasons for outsourcing technology and cybersecurity in the family office is that there's no expertise in-house, no technical resources, and it's more cost effective to outsource. It appears that most family offices operate with minimal protection. So, we're here to educate our clients. We're here to educate family offices, and obviously, whatever we can do to help.
Yeah, I guess the first step is to get educated. Um, let's talk about the why. Why are family offices such a rich target for cybersecurity criminals?
Yeah, so family offices are a target because they manage a concentrated treasure trove of high valued assets and extremely sensitive personal information. They often lack the robust cybersecurity defenses of a large corporation. They have a smaller, highly trusted staff, which makes them susceptible to social engineering. And I think most of that, they're focused on more of the legacy of the family office rather than protection. They just don't have enough knowledge about what to do to protect their environment.
It just does seem like one of the areas that's clear, when they decide whether they should outsource or insource. This seems like one of the areas where it's an easy decision. It seems like this should be one that's an automatic, that they should be outsourcing, that they should get a person or a firm that thinks about this 24/7, right?
Correct, correct.
What are some of the emerging trends that you're seeing out there? What is new on the landscape in terms of cybercrime?
So we're seeing a shift from broad attacks to highly personalized, sophisticated scams. The most common threats remain phishing and ransomware, but they are now powered by AI. Years ago, phishing would be emails and obviously whatever they can do to take over your data. I think with AI, sophisticated attackers are using AI to generate deepfakes, convincing audio and video impersonations of trusted executives or family members to trick staff into making fraudulent wire transfers. I think that's becoming a major and obvious problem in the community. And there's just no way to stop that unless you're educating your staff and obviously becoming more aware of what deepfakes are and how not to. You can't prevent deepfakes, but obviously you can learn more about it and how to not fall victim to a cybercrime.
Yeah, I mean, social engineering is one of those things where it used to be a little bit easier to pick up, right? That there'd be obvious spelling mistakes. You could tell that the writer wasn't necessarily a native English language. Now it's the context is perfect and it's personalized. It can be really tough.
I think what these cyber attackers are doing, just like these scams on mobile devices, they wear you down.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, they have patience. They can continue doing whatever they're going to do throughout the day, throughout the weeks, and they're going to finally hit somebody because they're in a rush to do something. And that's
Right.
where people not only lose their mind, they lose their ability to reason. And that's where cybercrime comes in.
Yeah, they're in a rush to try and get something done. They're trying to
Yep.
finish something. Maybe they're on the road. You're on the phone. You can't quite see everything.
Right.
What are some of the biggest mistakes that you see family offices make when it comes to cybersecurity?
I think the single biggest mistake is operating under the mindset of it won't happen to me. This leads to being reactive then rather than proactive approach. Other common mistakes would be relying on outdated security practices, not implementing multi-factor authentication, lacking a clear incident response plan. They also often neglect regular phishing exercises and security updates. So these are common themes of family offices where, like we discussed at the beginning of the podcast, they're just not putting in controls. So all these things, they're going to prevent cybercrime. They're going to prevent and educate people within the company. Hey, if you're going to be doing cyber training, you're going to learn what is out there. So I think instead of the mindset, it won't happen to me, you've got to be proactive and say, it will happen. Now let's defend it.
When it comes to the weakest link, we've talked a little bit about this social engineering. Where are family offices and the families themselves most vulnerable?
I think family offices, it's basically I think the key is families have to enforce formal protocols, such as requiring verbal communication, dual authorization process for high value transactions. It's also crucial to continue to have social engineering simulations, phishing exercises, awareness training. We're seeing a lot more family offices today ask for security awareness training. Just because they want to know, even things like you go to a restaurant and there's that code that is on a menu. Those are
Yeah.
high target items right now, and we tell clients today never download that at a menu. If you're at a restaurant, get a written menu versus downloading that because that's a great area for malware. They're going to get on your phone and they're going to start sifting out data or personalized information, and that's another area of concern.
Yeah, you definitely saw a lot of that with COVID, with the QR codes, and then they continue to persist today. What are some best practices? Obviously, I think training and regular training, it's certainly one of them. I don't know if you have a particular training program that you'd recommend, but what are some other best practices that family offices can implement?
I think there's many companies out there, including some of the major accounting firms, and you've had some podcasts with some of our colleagues that do regular IT risk assessments and cyber risk assessments. I think those are essential. If anybody feels they're at risk or just wants to make sure they have no gaps in controls, they should get a cybersecurity risk assessment. That will document, they also need a response plan, and they also need to implement technical control. So where we come in is take that risk assessment, understand the gaps and areas of improvement, and start implementing controls, best practices, and whether they have MFA in place or whether they have single sign-on or whether they have simple antivirus, which a lot of people are not putting on their systems or patching their computers. Common themes that we take for granted are being overlooked at some of the family offices. Not because they don't have the time, it's because they're just not educated on what they need.
Yeah,
So,
I would think that patching and automatic patching would be standard for the course.
it's all about building a robust and resilient security posture. That's got
Yeah.
to be forefront of any business today, especially family offices.
Obviously, family offices like a lot of firms, they use a lot of different third-party software that third-party risk can introduce vulnerabilities. Likewise, picking a particular vendor and evaluating them properly for how secure they are can help protect the family office. When it comes to third-party vendor management, how do you recommend that the family offices extend their evaluation that includes cybersecurity, and what should they do on that front?
Great question, and certainly that's an area of concern. So, we believe third-party vendors are a significant risk. Family offices need to make cybersecurity a key part of their vendor due diligence. When we work with family offices, that's one of our functions. is to look at their vendors' controls, what's in place, what's not in place. We ask those critical questions about their security protocols. How do they store data? How do they share data? Are they SOC 2 Type 2 certified? If any of these questions have any of these questions have responses that don't make sense, we'll come back to we'll come back to our client and say, look, either find a new vendor or let's figure out where their gaps are. But there is probably a question mark as to whether you want to work with them. Today, we're asking questions, are they doing regular penetration testing? Because most of these vendors, it's SaaS. They're holding the data in their
Yeah.
cloud.
Yeah.
And, even though family offices are signing into third-party applications, they've got to make sure their vendors have the controls in place. So penetration testing is key. Do they have a data breach plan? Do they have an incident response plan? And we review these documents for our clients to make sure they hold muster. Certainly, preferably would be that SOC 2 Type 2, because then they're contractually obligated to deliver these controls. And, we need to make sure that their contracts hold them accountable for any kind of data risk. So that's the kind of stuff that we're doing for our clients on a weekly basis.
Talk to me a little bit about SOC 2 Type 2. What does that mean, and what levels are in place with that?
Omega Systems, we're SOC 2 Type 2. It means that we go through a rigorous 6 months to 8 months control review to make sure that what we're doing for our clients, as well as what we do internally, we are safeguarding our information, our data centers, our data, our anything that we're doing and we're delivering is all contraction is all written down policies and procedures, and it's following best practices. And for that, SOC 2 and Type 2 is probably the standard out there for most service companies. If these companies who offer services don't have a SOC 2 Type 2, they may be too small and they shouldn't be involved in servicing family offices. So I think that's a prerequisite for working with family offices. Any large business should have a SOC 2 Type 2, especially those that service the family offices.
Yeah, it's normally right on their website too, right? They'll have the
Yep.
AICPA label from that because they've been certified. They have a right to
Correct.
to,
We
to
are
do
we are
that.
probably sending out our SOC 2 Type 2 several times a week just because clients want to make sure,
Yep.
the problem, Mark, is that everyone wants to transfer risk, right? So basically, I've got a SOC 2. We tell our clients we're SOC 2 Type 2. Any risk that they're taking, we're absorbing. Obviously, they need to have cybersecurity insurance to protect their environment, but they know that we're a trusted advisor and a solution provider because of that SOC 2 Type 2, and of course, reputation and experience in the market.
Well, let's talk about cybersecurity insurance. It's recommended. What is the common misconceptions around that type of insurance? What are some of the pitfalls regarding family offices seeking that type of insurance, and what's the best practice in that area?
So certainly, the misconception years ago, and probably people are more aware today, that general liability insurance does not cover cybersecurity. You've got to have a specific cybersecurity policy in place that outlines what happens if a breach occurs. Obviously, you may have to bring in forensics. You may have to bring in public relations firms. You've got to make sure that cybersecurity covers the costs involved with breach breach repair, data exfiltration. Certainly, working with public entities or law enforcement. These are all things that are covered under cybersecurity policies. So there are specific companies that offer cybersecurity insurance. And obviously, you need to have a good amount of coverage because some of these cyber criminals are going after a lot of data and high value data. And you've got to make sure your policy is protected for everything inclusive. Incident response to me is a major issue. Once a breach occurs, incident response, which could include forensics and data recovery, becomes a very costly event. So 2020 hindsight, you probably should be putting in those controls prior to make sure that those kind of things don't happen.
Obviously, prior they should have a response plan, right, in case
Correct.
the
Correct.
worst case does happen. What would be some of the key elements that they should have in their response plan?
A good incident response plan, I mean, look, tabletop exercises would be part of that same scenario. A good tabletop exercise is where key personnel get together in a low stress environment to discuss their roles and responsibilities during some sort of an emergency or crisis. Obviously, when crisis occurs, things get out of hand. Tabletop exercises tells you, hey, Mark, you're going to be doing this. Warren, you're going to be doing that. Pete, you're going to be doing this. So everything under that plan is attacked and accounted for. Obviously, it's also to measure your readiness that in the event something happens, you know how to take the next steps versus just shutting down and saying, okay, what do I do? So,
Losing that key time, right?
right. So the key is the incident response plan and testing it, making sure it's resilient, and obviously tabletop exercises is key.
If family office has been compromised, what should they avoid?
It's hard to say. You have to run your business, right? Certainly, you need to avoid being at a hotel or taking on public Wi-Fi. We do a lot of security awareness training, and people tell us what should we not do. So going
Yeah.
into public Wi-Fi, whether it's a Starbucks, whether it's a library, whether it's the airport, plugging in your cell phones into these USB data ports, which is another area for malware. Certainly, these QR codes, which we mentioned earlier, is another area of concern. Social networks, providing people where you're going to be is another area of concern for family offices. Years ago, people were more secretive, more private. Today, with social media, people are out there broadcasting what their next move is, where they're going on vacation, pictures of this, pictures of that. Behind your picture, you'll see a certain area, maybe a beach somewhere. That's an area where people are going to target. Whether it's a home invasion, ransomware, personal ransomware, human ransomware, data ransomware, anything could happen to a business.
Yeah, and it's not just the family office or the family, right? It could be the employee staff, the nanny could be taking a picture, and
Yep,
next thing you know, there's Picasso in the background, and now,
correct.
that there's more information than that family, I'm sure, would want to have out in public. Do you have a particular horror story? Without sharing names, do you have a particular horror story that you can share with me about a family office that it went sideways?
Yeah, I think the problem is business email compromise, and where people are wire transferring millions of dollars we had a situation where Patriarch came back from a trip, said, "Look, I need to wire transfer X number of dollars to buy several paintings." Obviously, it wasn't over voice; it was over email. The assistant, thinking it was that important, didn't even verify and validate that email. Just basically wire transferred the money, and they weren't a client yet, but they became a client a few months later when the accounting firm that's working with them realized they had lacks of controls. So it's the rush of doing things that are going to appease the patriarch and matriarch of the family and not taking proper controls or proper precautions to make sure it's protected. So in that case, they realized they made a mistake, and unfortunately, when you do a wire transfer, unless you can stop that wire transfer from the person sending it, that money is gone. Typically, we see a lot of that business email compromise. It's just because with today's cyber criminals, they're becoming so perfect with their emails and their deepfakes and their phishing and voice phishing, it becomes unimaginable what should look like correct and what shouldn't be correct. Best thing is to verify and validate over a phone call.
Well, I mean, the problem is that you probably have been infiltrated for a while now, and they've been listening and they've been watching, and they wait for
Yep.
that timing. They know that the patriarch was on vacation, and that it's very common for them to maybe purchase, artwork or even properties, and for these type of transactions to then be requested. And it's just a matter of timing that they're opportunistic. They've been listening for a long time, and then they
Yep.
swoop in
I
right
think
when
another, I
so
think
everything
another
seems logical, right?
Yep. I think another area of concern is AI. If people don't realize that this large language model, a lot of these family offices have their own investment teams. Their investment teams are doing research over AI, and unfortunately, they're not being careful of what they're putting on this large language model. critical or proprietary information is going out into the large language model, becoming another target for these family offices. So we instruct and advise our clients that if they want to put in any kind of AI for research, we need to put in the proper guardrails, just to make sure that data is not leaving the large language model, so to speak, and it's contained in the company. And obviously, they've got to, everybody plays a part in the family office. It's just not one person, it's the entire company. The entire company has got to play that part.
With AI, what's working in our favor for the good guys with AI? How is AI helping to protect families and family offices?
So another great question. I think AI, unfortunately, is a double-edged sword. On one hand, cyber criminals are using it to create more effective social engineering attacks, automate reconnaissance, scale their malicious activities. On the other hand, family offices can leverage AI, and companies like us who use AI for power defense tools. Examples are we analyze email traffic, we analyze network activity. The time it takes for our AI tools to analyze email, analyze traffic could be milliseconds, where years ago it was 10 seconds, 15 seconds. So we're using AI as a defense. They're using it as an offense, and there's got to be some balance. But it's a 24 by 7, 365 effort to thwart any kind of attacker. But obviously, the more tools we get, the more tools they get.
Right.
We're constantly monitoring our clients' networks 24/7 for any type of sophisticated threats. Any anomalies we see, we're stopping. I think the key is right now zero trust is another item out there. We don't have, if we deny by default on anything out there, a new employee comes in 10 years ago, you would say, okay, let's give Jim the same credentials as Joe. Today, you deny everything by default and start creating new policies for every employee or new procedures for every employee. So you've got to be careful with AI because of the speed of what these guys can do.
So wrapping this all up, give me two areas that family offices should be on the outlook for, and give me like two recommendations.
Again, the mindset is it's not if, it's when. And I believe the key is starting with a comprehensive risk assessment to understand the unique vulnerabilities of that family office. I think MFA and patching, a well-defined incident response plan. Some of these things are critical, and again, we take it for granted. But if you have the solid foundation of putting in of getting a cyber risk assessment, putting in the MFA, and looking at where you're vulnerable and buttoning up those holes, that would be a great start to keeping your family intact.
And I'm just gonna say, get professional help.
Yep,
This
yep,
is
yep,
something
yep,
that needs to be outsourced. It's not something that unless you
yep.
have somebody that's a dedicated resource that's doing this 24 by 7, if it's somebody's part-time job, it's not enough, right? So
Yeah, certainly. Yeah, like you said, it's a job that we take seriously. We're 24/7. We've got a separate SOC team in place to make sure we're protecting our clients on every vulnerable issue, whether it's data, whether it's email, whether they're systems, whether they're mobile devices. Obviously, everything has got to be locked down, and nothing should be taken for granted.
all right. Well, I think that's a good words of advice. Warren, I love to end these podcasts more on a personal note with three questions that have nothing to do with wealth tech. You are a founding member of the Outlier Project. What is it? Why did you get involved with this?
So I got involved, Mark, with the Outlier project during COVID. It seemed to be a lot of curious minds are involved with the Outlier project. It's like-minded people who want to go the extra step. It's more of a social network, but it's to help people create better mindset, focused and driven people who can get together on a weekly, monthly basis and talk about whatever their problems are, but solving problems and figuring out what to do and what not to do. But it's become a great source of companionship for people. Obviously, they bring in speakers every month and discuss new ways of getting ahead.
Um, when you're not fighting cybercrime, what do you do for fun?
Before Omega, I founded and operated two similar companies. Omega, we were private. One of my last MSP. We were purchased by private equity. We merged with Omega, but I spent 18 hours a day working. Since 2022, when we were purchased by private equity, I found a lot more time to spend with my family, and it became a different focus of life. Traveling, being able to visit different cities, and looking at the world differently as I did before. Work was everything on my mind. Today, it's more family, more travel, more having fun. So, travel is key. I think anywhere you can see water and relax is definitely key. Obviously, during the winter time, I love to ski, but summertime is more for relaxation, taking up some good hobbies, smoking some great cigars, and having some scotch with some friends. So,
There you go.
those things changed my life in the last 5 years.
I love it. You're based in the New York City area. I love New York City. What do you love about the city? What's your favorite spot that people might not know about?
So obviously, everyone who's not visited New York always say, like you said, what's so intriguing about New York City? Hey, it's fast-paced business culture. It's the Mecca of the world. We believe it's still the Mecca. It's a city that never sleeps. It's 24 by 7 energy. You've got a melting pot of different cultures. I was reading somewhere a few weeks back that there's probably 800 languages spoken in New York. So it's endless amount of activity, whether it's museums, whether it's parks, whether it's restaurants. You can find any type of restaurant, any type of food. I love being in New York because obviously, with most of our clients who are in New York, they've got between 38th and 57th Street, between 3rd and 8th Avenue. We probably have over 100 clients that we can visit, and you go to California, you can see one client a day. In New York, you can see three or four. And anybody who visits New York, you can have a morning breakfast meeting and another meeting before lunch and two meetings after lunch. So and still get home for dinner.
Had a, had a
I
chance.
think,
So New York, like you said, you can get four meetings in a day.
yep,
I had a chance to work for an LA-based company for a while, and my first trip to try to line up visits and stuff like that. Yeah, it's like two. You
yeah,
know,
two exactly. That's
one in the
exactly.
morning, one in the afternoon, and you're gonna be in the car all day. So
Yep, yep,
on the good old 405. So it is the city does have an energy that is tough to beat. I think the diversity of it just adds to that richness, that culture of the city, and you could eat your way through that city and not repeat a restaurant for the rest of your life, pretty much.
yep. You can have a great piece of pizza, a great bagel, and certainly a great steak in the same block. And probably not leave a block for an entire week just because the diverse restaurants. You mentioned in your question about possibly an area that I love to see. I don't know if you've ever been to the High Line.
Yeah.
Yeah, people just don't know about what that looks like and what it is. It's probably about a mile and a half long of an elevated linear park built on a former freight line in the city. Most people don't even know that trees exist in the city. Obviously, it's Central Park, but this is in the heart of
Yeah.
this is in probably I would say the meatpacking district at Chelsea Avenue, the Chelsea area, where it's an elevated park and it's really beautiful. So
Yeah.
the city's got some interesting areas, and a lot of people never heard of the High Line.
Yeah, it ends at Hudson Yard or begins at Hudson Yard, goes down to
Yep.
Chelsea. It's a great take. I think that's a great uh, place to go, and it's a really nice walk. Nice park experience. Wait, best pizza in New York?
They always say raise, but I think look, Little Italy is known for Italian food. I don't know necessarily believe it's the best pizza, but
Yeah.
I think there's a raise almost at every other block. Pizza's fantastic in New York City.
Oh, that's great. I'm gonna throw it out there for Joe's Pizza.
Yep, yep.
So, all right, Warren, this has been great. Thanks so much for coming on the Wealth Tech podcast.
Thank you so much, Mark. Appreciate the time.